All right, welcome everybody to the post-draft edition of Under the Dome tonight. I'm your host, Alan Orick, with my partner, Sean Williams, who is not broadcasting from the bathroom this time. He's actually in a somewhat non-echo room in, I guess, the restaurant you work at, correct?
Yeah, I'm in live from the Two Dudes Studios, I guess you could say. Uh, this is where they eat. Sports Talk 97.7 has done a live remote from here. The Two Dudes Radio, which my two bosses have their own podcast, they they record from here as well. As a matter of fact, let's do something here. Give everybody a little peek into my world. Uh, this is the view that I have tonight, and that is Two Dudes Brewing Cube. I don't know how well you could see all that, but anyway.
Now that works. That works. It beats my view here. I got the Saints room. That's all I can do here. But okay, Sean, how much of the draft, honestly, did you watch?
Um, they had a pretty good commercial going into night one, uh, but beyond that, no, I watched the entire first round because we had an event here, uh, which we weren't in, so it was kind of whatever. But um, I think I caught part of the second and most of the third rounds. But beyond that, I didn't get to see too much this time.
Well, I didn't watch. I didn't watch much on Saturday. I watched the Saints' fourth round pick get selected, but for the most part, I kind of left Saturday alone. I watched Thursday and Friday nights. I was on a crawfish boil on Saturday with my family and things, so it was fun. I had a good time, and I just kind of kept track of what the Saints were doing via Twitter. But for a team that started out having only what, a second round pick, two fifths, two sixths, and two sevenths, I think, or maybe one fifth, two sixths, and two sevenths. Um, by the end of the day, they ended up getting a fourth round pick, gave up the fifth, um, gave up one of their sixth, and had still had the two sevenths, and they still came out in very good shape. They didn't draft sexy. And what I mean by sexy, they didn't draft a wide receiver. They didn't draft a running back, a quarterback of the future, um, anything like, or a big tight end, anything like that, although they had the opportunities to do that. What they did draft were players who were ranked much higher than where the Saints selected them and got very good players, especially in the second and fourth round, that are going to be starters in this team this year. Um, and I'm talking about Eric McCoy, the center from Texas A&M. And before I butcher this poor man's name, I want to make sure I say it right. Chauncey Gardner Johnson,
That's it.
uh, the safety from Florida. He's a ball hawk. He plays free safety, but quite honestly, you watch and you read about this kid. He can play everything. He can play strong. He can play free. He can even play nickelback. Well, no, he doesn't remind me of anything. He's not a rock star. He doesn't have a photograph. But anyway, he can be your nickelback player. Why are you laughing? Why are you rolling your eyes at me over that joke?
No, I'm just listening.
Okay. All right. Okay. Because this is the next contestant. There's a Nickelback song for you. Anyway.
Before we get into the analysis,
Oh, yes. Pay the bills.
got to pay the bills.
Pay the bills.
We want to thank Fan First. I almost forgot. Fan First Productions for sponsoring us. Invite you guys to subscribe to our show on iTunes and on YouTube, and follow us on Facebook. Give us a like. And back to Al.
Okay, no problem. Well, let's first talk about the center from Texas A&M. He played in the SEC. According to everything I've read, and I'll show you my book here. This is the book I'm reading, Mike Detillier's draft report. I'll do a lot of hawking for Mike Detillier's book because I'll tell you what, not only does it have a breakdown almost every player, the only player I don't think they have in here is the seventh round pick, the linebacker from Idaho. Not only does he have every breakdown of every player the Saints drafted, but he also has breakdowns on most of the free agents that they signed. It's a great book. It really is. My second year buying this. I wish I would have bought it years ago because, especially with Mickey Loomis and the scouting department, there's always guys like, who in the hell is this? Before I can say whether or not this is a good player. But yeah, let's talk about the center first. Playing in the SEC, this guy, 4-year starter, allegedly only gave up 1 sack in pass protection. The first thing that the announcer, and I watched ESPN this time because last year I watched NFL Network for the draft for the first time since I've started watching the draft back in 1988. And I tell you what, I couldn't watch it this year. It was that bad. The coverage is that bad. And now with Mike Mayock on, it was even less incentive for me to watch it. I can tolerate ESPN. They're nowhere near as good as they were 20 years ago, 15 years ago, when they had Chris Berman and Tom Jackson and people like that. They're still too touchy-feely into the soap opera part of these players and not much on analysis, hardcore analysis like they used to be. But they won't keep going back to the same stories over and over and over again. I get it. I'm talking about last year's coverage of NFL Network. I get it. That kid, Shaquille Griffin, I think it is, that was missing the hand from the who got picked by the Seahawks along with his brother. I get it. That's a good story. You show the kids who are missing limbs and missing hands, missing feet. I get that. After the first 4 times, you got my emotions. By the 20th time of me seeing the same damn story in 3 days, I'm pretty much done emotionally. I'm now wanting to cut off the hands of the person who made the film. I now want to amputate the hosts and hostesses of the show. Get to analysis of the other 200-something players that got picked. I've had enough of that, so I didn't watch.
This year's story was the I want to say it's the running back from Alabama.
Which one, Damian Harris or Johnson? Josh Johnson.
Wasn't his name Jacobs?
Jacobs, yeah, I'm sorry, Jacobs.
The one that came up hard and he had been homeless and all this and all. Wasn't that the kid from Alabama?
I don't know. After a while, every kid has the same story. Yeah. I hate to say this, but do you realize? And maybe it's a commentary. My wife and I talked about this the other night. Maybe it's a commentary about what these kids in football and stuff. But every single one has a missing dad in prison, mother drug addict, broken home, lived in a 1-room shack. Muddy Waters couldn't write a story like this, or Albert King, a blues guitarist. They lived the life of a blues song. And I get it, but after a while it's a dark and stormy night story. Tell me something different. Find a different angle to tell me this player's story that makes him unique and interesting, because after a while it becomes like a drinking game. Okay, we're going to do a checklist here. No father, take a shot. Mother on drugs, take a shot. Lived in a bad home with no air conditioning and no heat, take a shot. I know right now people are screaming at me, oh my God, what kind of monster are you? I'm not. It's just it becomes a cliche after a while.
It
What
does.
what makes stories interesting to me is let's take Warwick Dunn's story, and I don't expect everybody to be like Warwick Dunn, but you remember Warwick Dunn when he came out in the draft, okay,
Yeah.
from Baton Rouge. His mother was working the detail, paid not detail. I'm sorry, she was working a side job as security, and she got shot. Working in a convenience store, I believe, as security, and she got shot. Now Warwick Dunn took over, became the patriarch of his family, raised his brother and sister, went to college. His mother was a police officer who got shot outside of her police job and died. And since then, has taken his life, even after his playing career was over with, and bought people houses, of families in similar situations. Now, granted, these people had to earn it, they had to work, and show they can keep this house. You didn't just give a house away. But that's a good story. That's a different story. That's a story worth telling because it's unique among other stories. That's the kind of stuff I like to see during the draft, and don't
Well,
repeat that
it
story
hasn't
a
been
hundred
the
times.
same since the draft turned into what's the word I'm looking for? It's an entertainment thing now.
Yeah, it is.
It's not about football.
Well, I mean, you watch the old broadcast. I'm talking about the original broadcast on ESPN, beginning in 1983, and working their way up. And they really didn't know what to do with this. And like Chris Berman said, my God, it's like reading names out of a phone book. How are people going to sit and watch this stuff? So they kind of invented the draft coverage, and they did start telling stories about these players, but mainly it was about the analysis of the players. And I can hear you already. When are you going to do that on this show? But I mean, I'm just talking about the draft coverage that made it worth watching for 2 days back then. It's now become 3 days. It's now become a big show. It's now, even the announcement is a big deal. Instead of just the commissioner announcing it, you start getting former players come in. You start having all kinds of guests coming in to say things. It's all a show, and it's something
Well,
that
used to if you got drafted, they brought you up on stage. You held up during the first round. You held up the jersey with the number one on it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I get that. I mean, through the course of the entire history of this league, how many people can say that they were drafted in the first round of the NFL draft? Okay, I get that.
Right.
But now this player is drafted. We have to hand him a cap. We have to bring him out so he can interact with Goodell. Hand him the jersey. He has to have his kid or his grandmom's picture or just whatever. All this stuff.
Just look at the green room now. When the draft, I started watching the draft. You had maybe 4 or 5 guys in the green room, and most of them were guys that they pretty much, thanks to Gil Brandt, pretty much knew they would get taken in the first 5 or 6 picks. So that's who was there. Now, because of situations like Aaron Rodgers and Brady Quinn, who just sat there and watched themselves tumble, and all these other players getting picked who are not even there, now they got to start inviting the top 30 players, the top 40 players, and you get a guy like Drew Luck, whose name was not called on Thursday at all. I'm sorry, Drew Lock. I said Drew Luck. Drew Lock. His name was not called at all. He had to wait another day, so yeah, it's become much more of an entertainment piece now. It's not about NFL football, really. It's like that stupid award show they got now. It's about entertainment only, and the draft coverage reflects that. It's much more human interest now instead of hardcore analysis. They do a little bit of that, but then just kind of push that off to the side, and the rest of it is all about, fluff, for lack of a better term. So let's go back and let's talk about Drew McCoy, for example. Max Unger retired rather unexpectedly for Saints fans. I think the Saints organization kind of knew he was going to retire. He had been keeping them abreast of it since the end of the season. But we signed Nick Eaton from the Vikings. We've been grooming Cameron Tom for 3 years now to take over at center. Now they bring in Eric McCoy, the number one center in the draft, really. He was a projected first round pick. We get him in the second round. He is going to be your starter. What do you think, or do you think that the fallout's going to be on the offensive line? What happens with Eaton, Will Clapp, Cameron Tom, and even to an extent Andrus Peat? What do you think is going to happen?
I don't think that all of them make the 53-man roster.
Okay.
Now, I don't know which will be the odd man out, if that'll be Clapp or if that'll be Tom, but I don't see all of them. You went out and got Eaton, so you kind of got to figure that they have him penciled in. You saw Clapp and Tom spotty duty last year. They're going to have to step it up in a major way and, for lack of a better term, cross-train at other positions to become more valuable to the team, or I don't see them making the 53 roster.
What, if any, do you think is a message to Pete?
You need to stay healthy. But, see, it's kind of an odd dynamic there, because with the situation with Armstead being what it is, when he's healthy, he may be one of the very best in the game when he's healthy. But if you lose him, then you almost have to have Pete to be able to step into that role. The undependability, is that a word? The undependability of Teron Armstead's health is job security for Pete.
Yeah, this is what Matthew texted me, my son, immediately after they selected McCoy. He believes that the offensive line will be Ramczyk, Warford, McCoy, Eaton, and then Armstead, with Pete being the swing third tackle, swing guard tackle, and then either Clapp or Tom being the backup guard center. That was his feeling. I can see that. You paid Eaton to be a starter, but he's also a valuable backup. I'm just not willing to concede that Pete's going to lose his job from the outset. I think I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think that Pete is absolutely one of the most valuable offensive linemen that you have, because outside of center, he can play anywhere along the line of scrimmage. Now, as of late, even Pete's health has become a bit of a sticking point. But, I mean, you look at the number of snaps that all of those guys have played, and I would venture to say that Pete has probably played more since he joined the team than any other offensive lineman that we've had, except possibly Unger.
Yeah. I look at, I can agree with that. I just look at it as he talked about wanting to improve the depth of that interior offensive line. And clearly what we saw after the Rams game and the Eagles game, once it started with Dallas, we saw Unger go on a quick decline. Pete got beat up, and even Warford struggled a bit. So the middle of that line by the end of the season and the postseason was pretty beat up compared to how they looked against the Bengals and the Rams, where they just basically dominated those defensive lines, especially the Bengals game. I think Peyton does not want to go through that again. So that's why he wants this kind of depth. That if a guy gets hurt, we're not going to rush him back out there. We're going to be okay with our depth. We're going to have experienced players at our depth. So I definitely, when people were talking about trading Pete, I'm like, no, you're not going to do that because we really don't have, first off, a third tackle on this team. And secondly, the cross training you're talking about, they definitely want that cross training because the line gets beat up. This line has never played an entire 16 game season altogether. They've always had, whether it's Armstead, whether it's Pete, someone's always been hurt. So they want a quality offensive line because, once again, this team's built to run for a Super Bowl, and they don't want that excuse that you're beat up going into the playoffs, and that's why you don't win. All that work is wasted because you just aren't healthy enough come January. So, yeah, the McCoy pick is really exciting, and I definitely think he's a starter. I think the rest of it's just going to shake out. The Eaton Pete battle is going to be something worth watching this training camp and this preseason.
Well, I can't see any scenario where we don't have Pete going into September.
I don't either, and I got $50 on it to say I'm right. Well, it's
the pick actually, and I felt the same way the year that we took Pete.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime that you can put a good, solid offensive lineman in front of Breeze, then how can you not love that? I mean,
right.
But I much like you and I were talking about off the air, I really loved both of the first picks. The kid from Florida, the safety. Mm-hmm. And like you said, I agree with you. We're looking at possibly a day one starter with both of those first two picks.
Yeah, I think the first thing people said was, okay, there's your Coleman replacement. I think it's more than a Coleman replacement. I think we're going to look at the three safety alignment again, because this kid, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, we're talking about now from Florida, the 4th round pick, the pick we got from the Miami Dolphins, in order to move up in the 2nd round to get McCoy, we also got the 4th round pick from the Dolphins, and the Dolphins traded back, ironically, to the 62nd pick, our pick in the 2nd round, and used that pick to get their quarterback of the future, Josh Rosen, we were talking.
Wait, time out. Since you brought that up,
okay,
how you feel about this?
Oh, I think the Cardinals are stupid, and I think the Cardinals deserve. I want the Cardinals to be a dumpster fire, not even a dumpster fire, a tire fire for the next decade, because I think the hiring of that coach was stupid. I thought the hiring of the previous coach was stupid. The general manager, who is still there, needs to go. If I'm the coach of the Cardinals, and if I'm the GM of the Cardinals, I'd have built my team around Rosen. I would have talked about taking Murray, but I'd have been shopping the hell out of that pick, because my team's a train wreck right now. I'm going to let somebody be stupid and offer me a lot of picks to move up. I'll trade back, and I'm going to build up my defense. I would have hired a coach like Vic Fangio. I would not have let him go to Denver. I would have been aggressive trying to hire Vic Fangio and built my defense, knowing the division I'm in. I'm in the NFC West. So I got to face Sean McVay's Los Angeles Rams. I got to face Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks. And I got to face Mr. Offense number 2, the 49ers, and Jimmy Garoppolo with, what's his name? Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan. So I'm going to build a defense that's going to put those quarterbacks in a cemetery. not the hospital, but the cemetery, because those offenses are quarterback centric. I'm going to do my best to knock those quarterbacks out of the game, out for the season, so I have an easier shot in the playoffs and winning that division. I'm going to build a monster defense, and on offense, I'm going to build a strong running game with Rosen and let Rosen kind of develop slowly, but I can win with him. Instead, we're going to get this guy, and we've talked about this last week or 2 weeks ago. No, it was last week.
Yeah, it was last week.
Yeah, time flies when the house is on fire at work. But anyway, um, we talked about, Kingsbury's offense and how I feel like it's trying to bring in the University of Houston offense, the run and shoot from the 80s when you brought Mouse Davis and his silver stretch to Detroit, because you drafted Andre Ware and you think you're going to put up those same kind of video game numbers in the NFL that you did in college football. And I just don't see that happening with Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray. I just don't see it. And that offensive line, they didn't really improve that offensive line, so they're going to beat the living hell out of him. He's going to be a swinging pinata back there. Once defenses figure out where he likes to run, they're going to punish him. So
they're going to find out real quick in Arizona that the run and shoot without an offensive line and with only a 17 years in the league wide receiver to throw to, albeit one of the all-time greatest receivers. But he's been in the league for 17 years.
They're
going to find out just how quickly the run and shoot is going to turn into the chunk and puke.
Well, it's not really the run and shoot. It's a spread system. But yeah, I get what you're saying. They're just going to find out that that they need a lot more than Kyler Murray. So I thought it was a stupid pick for the Cardinals to make, because if you're stuck with the number one overall pick, build your damn defense, build your offensive line. You know who did a good draft? I hate to say this, but the Atlanta Falcons at least showed the intelligence to build that offensive line with the first two picks to try and protect their franchise, which is Matt Ryan. If Matt Ryan is getting the crap beat out of him, I don't care if you have Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley and Sanu and you've got a great running game. Your quarterback's laying on the ground in pieces. He can't throw the ball. They get it. And I saw a lot of teams get it, except for the Giants. But I saw a lot of teams get it and understand how you build a quality team. Even the Baltimore Ravens, they went out and got two good wide receivers. They don't have anybody who can throw to them, but they got two good wide receivers. And, oh, man, that dude. Don't even get me started on that dude. That's why I'm so glad he's not a Saint, because he's going to throw beautiful passes well over the heads of Marquise Brown and Andy Isabella. That's just how it's going to be. He's going to run that read option to death because he's just not that great of a passer.
He's going to run the read option for about 2, maybe 3 years, and then he's going to start playing half seasons and third seasons because he's going to always end up being hurt.
Well, the team's just going to tee off on him. They're going to go after, they're going to play meet me at the quarterback, and if the running back has the ball, hit him too. Throw him into the quarterback. That's just what it's going to be until he shows that he can throw the ball consistently and accurately. Whatever. From the pocket. But whatever. That's the Ravens' problem. I don't care about the Ravens.
Harbaugh is clinging to a false hope, man.
Well, I mean, he's got it. He can only deal with what he's got. They made that decision to go that direction. Not that Flacco was much better, but that's going to be the fate of that team. I mean, what you saw,
the Carolina Panthers beginning their exit strategy.
That was interesting because of all the teams that I saw taking Will Grier, I did not see the Panthers doing that. But you know what? Ron Rivera's on the hot seat.
So
man. Well, yeah, but Ron Rivera is really on a hot seat because he is joined at the hip with Cam Newton. He really is. And Cam Newton is going to have to progress past being a running quarterback into a consistent passer. And I think this is their backup plan because who knows what that shoulder's like. I personally think he bounces back from the shoulder because I think it's no different than Aaron Brooks in 2002. But maybe they don't feel that way. Maybe they feel like it's time to move on from Cam because he's I don't he's not an albatross. That's not the word I'm looking for. But maybe it's they just feel like they need a new face in the franchise. And maybe Cam Newton's not going to be the face of the franchise anymore.
Well, see, I look at it differently. I look at it like it was more of a pick of necessity because and I've said this for 2 years now. Cam Newton is right on the cusp of being used up because of how you used him.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to have a shelf life. He's not going to be one of those guys like Brady or Breeze that's talking about playing quarterback in the NFL till he's 45 years old because he has absolutely gotten the hell beat out of him over his entire career.
Yeah, and they haven't done him any favors because they haven't really surrounded him with quality talent, consistent, especially in the receiver department.
Well, it's just like you said. I believe it was last week. The Carolina Panthers offense either goes through Greg Olsen or Cam Newton.
Yep.
And it has for years and years and years. And the human body can't take that, especially not in the NFC South.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like playing in the SEC in college. You're playing against some of the best in the league in that division, and they are going to hit you and hit you hard and hit you often, especially if you're a quarterback.
Well, I was sitting there as I'm watching the draft, and we know Carolina doesn't have any receivers. Let's, look at these guys they draft. Now, Brian Burns is a good player, but he got a linebacker, defensive end, who is basically the replacement for Thomas Davis. They got Greg Little as a tackle to replace Speedy McSpeed Bump. Will Greer, a surprise. Round 4, you take another linebacker, defensive end, Christian Miller. Where's the receiver? Jordan Scarlett, a 5th-round pick out of Florida as your running back to back up what's his name? Christian McCaffrey. Okay, where's the receiver? Where's the tight end? Dennis Daly, tackle, South Carolina, so you got another tackle. We wait until round 7 for Terry Goodwin from Georgia, who's an okay receiver, not a great one, but, is a good receiver that maybe can make the team in the slot, but where's your starter? Where's your number one guy? Where's your tight end? Where's your youth? You're in a position to take an Irv Smith. You're in a position to take, and I know this is now we're talking Carolina Panthers, like this is our team, but that's all part of the equation. Why do you take a Will Greer in the 3rd round when you had other needs ahead of that? And was he rated that much higher that you took him at pick 100? I'm sorry. Maybe they were afraid the Saints were going to take him.
Well, I'm like you. I just these teams they go through the course of the season, and Carolina started like what 8-1 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Was it 8-1, 8-2, something like that?
Right.
And they won one game in the last half of the season. You
Yeah.
see what your needs are. You know why you are finishing the season on a 7-8 game losing streak. And how can the coach that does not address these needs not be on the hot seat?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. I mean, I'm just looking at the free agents that they got. I have to go back, pull up this page, and I promise you, get back to the Saints in just a second. But I mean, you brought in a center, so you're rebuilding that offensive line. You brought in a backup. You brought in a backup quarterback. Another offensive tackle. You signed Bruce Irvin. But you still haven't signed the receiver. So where's your receiving core? That's what you really needed was receivers. I expected them to go after offensive linemen. I said that in the preview that we did last week. So that's what tells me that maybe this is um, Ron Rivera's last go around here. What are they going to do?
Well, you're
So
talking about a team that's what, like 5 years removed from being in the Super Bowl,
yeah.
and Dan Quinn less, but only by a year. Uh, and maybe not so much Carolina, but at least the Falcons. That team had it. It pains me to say good things about them, but it is what it is. That team has way, way too much talent on it to
Hmm.
not be making the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
You
Grant. No, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, you've got Chris Manhertz and Ian Thomas are your tight ends. Are they really a replacement for Greg Olson? Not really. You got Torrey Smith. He's really a one trick pony. You got DJ Moore, who you did draft last year. Um, but for the most part, you don't know what you're going to get out of him. Because correct me if I'm wrong, didn't he end up the season injured last year?
I think
I
so. Yeah.
I'm trying to see if maybe he didn't. I just don't remember. Ah, that's what happens when you go on these different sites to try. All of a sudden, you get the stupid pop-up ads. But anyway, you know, uh, in a division, and you've got to play to your division's strengths in order to win the division. In a division that is as pass oriented as both the Saints and the Falcons are, you know, upgrading not only your secondary, but also upgrading your offensive line, upgrading your defensive line, and being able to play in a shootout is paramount to survive this division. Um, and right now, the Saints and the Falcons look like they're the two teams that are most prepared to play in a shootout. Now, Tampa is trying to build a defense, and you can see that with their draft selections. Um, they are willing to ride out this last year with, Mr. Crab legs until they don't have to use him anymore. They can afford, because they got a brand new coach, they can afford to take a mulligan this year, build that defense up, and next year target a quarterback. Next year, really address and build that offense. But they've got a little bit of a scary team if they ever figure out how all these pieces fit together. And they're going to be with Bruce Arians as the head coach. They're going to be a pass-oriented team. So Tampa looks like they're a team on their way up. Carolina looks like they're a team on the way down. And Atlanta is just going to be a pain in our ass for a little bit longer because they had a pretty good draft to straighten out their problems.
Yeah. Um, okay. Well, let's shift back to the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, well, I was going to this. That also explains the choice of Chauncey Gardner Johnson, because you've got a guy who's basically a hybrid safety cornerback. He can play free and strong safety. He can be your nickel back. He's a guy who is a ball hawk. At Florida, he was an aggressive player. I think he scored something like, picked up like 9 passes. As Mike Detillier says, Gardner Johnson lacks great height, but he plays like a 6'3" safety. He's much more comfortable in man coverage, which we like to play. Um, he he likes being aggressive, breaking on the ball. He's good on special teams. He's kind of he plays all out. He's an intelligent player. Spends a lot of time in the film room. He was ranked. Mike Detillier has him ranked as the second best safety behind Nasser Adderley, who is, I believe, he's not the grandson, is he, of Herb Adderley? I don't remember if he was the grandson or not. Let's see. No, cousin. He's the cousin of Herb Adderley. Okay, but yeah, he's one of the best safeties in the draft, and we get him in the fourth round. A guy who's projected bottom of the first, top of the second. That's incredible value. I mean, I can't tell you how good of a pick this was. I was really excited when we got this guy. I wanted Paris Campbell. Unfortunately, the two guys I wanted went right in front of me. I would have loved to have gotten Drew Lock earlier in the draft, but then have Will Grier go right in front of us. And I believe one other guy went right in front of us. Damn it. I knew I should have left this one up. It was two guys I liked went back to back right before we selected him. NFL Draft 2019. I'm pulling it up real quick just so I can be confident in the guys I wanted. Okay. In the second round, right before the Saints picked. No, I'm sorry, fourth round. That's where I was. I knew I was right. Yeah. Hakeem Butler. That was the other one I liked. I liked Hakeem Butler and Ryan Finley. That was the quarterback. Not Greer. But Ryan Finley, the quarterback from North Carolina State, who I felt like was a very Drew Brees-like quarterback. I would have enjoyed seeing the Saints take him. Those two players went right in front of us. So we took Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. And that player, I mean, that made the draft for me. Everything else, I was like, okay, everything else is line up.
Okay, then I want to ask you to pick your lock of the draft.
So okay.
It's going to be Chauncey.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, give me one sleeper from this year's draft class.
From the draft class?
From our
no, I got what you mean. McCoy and Johnson, your two locks. God, here's the thing: when you get to the sixth round pick, Saquon Hampton, here's a guy. Oh my God, I can't believe I just said that. Now I sound like Chris Collinsworth, but seriously, here's a guy who played linebacker. He played safety. He played a little bit of cornerback. He's the kind of guy who is going to be a special teams kind of guy. He is going to be the number one challenger to like Hardy, to Chris Banjo. So it's hard for me to say whether or not he's going to be a sleeper. Same with the linebacker. I don't know what's going to happen with this linebacker. He is probably going to be more likely a practice squad kind of guy because, again, he's going to be a guy that's going to have to make plays on special teams, and I just don't think he'll be able to do it. Not yet. He'll have to really, really shock us all by doing that. So Saquon, let me just tell you, Saquon Hampton, this is what Mike Detillier says. Really good athlete who has great size and foot speed and has really picked up his game over the past two seasons. Hampton matches up well in pass coverage. He has a smooth turn in and run skills in reverse. He has good leaping and timing skills with the ball in flight. He's got good hands for the interception, a quick read who reacts quickly on the field. He's a team leader, emotional player on the field. He likes to play physical, hard. And again, that comes from being a linebacker at one point. Very hard tackler. Good good range, can run the field very well. Recovery speed is very good in deep middle spots. He needs to get stronger, but his aggressive play and quick read and react skills translate well in the football field. Let's see where he goes. I don't want to be the obvious and say the sleeper is going to be the tight end from Notre Dame because am I saying this guy's name right? Alize? Aleze? Alize? He's got an accent on the E. That's what makes me really question it. But anyway, Mac, he needs a lot of grooming. He is not as raw as Dan Arnold, but he needs some work. He's got some talent to work with as a tight end. He just needs a lot of refining. He may end up being your third tight end on the team, but it's probably a year or so before he really has any kind of impact on the team or shows anything to us. So I guess Hampton will be my sleeper of this group.
That would have been who I picked too, strictly from the standpoint of where these other guys play and who they're going to have to compete with for playing time.
They're not warm bodies. I'll tell you that. They're not warm bodies. You got a lot of value in this draft. The only guy who pretty much went where he was supposed to go was the linebacker they took in the 7th. Everyone else was ranked much higher than where the Saints took him. So they got a lot of value out of this draft. And I think that's why people were just puzzled. Why two safeties? Where's the wide receiver? I think the way this board kind of fell for them, they just saw players that just popped out and said, look, we're in the middle of the 6th round. Here's a guy we've got circled as a 4th round player in the 6th. We can make a reach and get a guy who is probably around a 6th round receiver right here. Chances are he's not going to make our team. But this guy who is a 4th round safety, we can get him in the 6th. Maybe this is the kind of guy who actually has a chance to stick with our team instead of just getting a warm body. You know, I think that was the problem we had last year with that tackle we got from Florida State. We took him in the 4th round, and all the fans like, you could have got him in the 6th. You could have got him in the 7th. Why you took him in the 4th? You know, I think that was the issue we had last year, where we kind of reached for a guy because we wanted to get that young 3rd tackle, and instead of being patient and just taking a player regardless of position, just because he was ranked that much higher than everyone else.
Well, I mean, you bought into the pedigree and not the player.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I mean, it proved out to be what it was. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that being said, all these players we've talked about so far, and like I said, I think the first 2 picks, the 2nd and 4th round pick, those are starters. I think those 2 guys are going to be guys who we're going to know, going to be out there on the field. I think in the cornerback room, even because we may end up going with 5 safeties, the cornerback room is going to get really scary right now because you're talking about a guy who now can threaten not only Ken Crawley's position, but also P.J. Williams and to a certain extent, Patrick Robinson's position. Yep. Because if this guy, and I'm talking about Chauncey now from Florida, if this guy can play the nickel position, the big nickel, the Saints like to call it, what happens to the cornerbacks now? Where do they go? You know, are you going to now start keeping, you know, you're going to be in a big nickel a lot more than you were in the regular nickel defense especially when you're playing pass offenses like the Falcons. You know, are you going to start matching up, you know, Gardner Johnson against somebody like a Calvin Ridley or a Sanu, or, you know, how is this going to work out? That'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, certainly. I much like you, I think we got major bang for the buck in this draft. the tight end, as you said off air, that's going to be a project.
Mm-hmm.
Not really sure which way that'll go. I don't see him be being an impact player immediately by any stretch of the imagination. Um,
It'd be a
but
real surprise. It just honestly, it'd be a real surprise if he
yeah,
is.
well, you're not setting the bar of expectations very high on him anyway because you just signed Cooks. You have Hill behind Cook. No, wait, Cook?
Yeah, Cook. Yeah, great
Jared
Cook.
Cook. Cook didn't sound right for some reason.
No, it's
You,
Jared Cook. Yeah.
you just went out and you got Cook. You got Hill behind him, who's
Mm-hmm.
your experience and your blocker, and you got Arnold, who has to trend up in his
He's a
second.
project. He's a project. He is
Yeah.
a project as well.
Well, I mean, he was a project to begin with,
Right.
and he's got a year of experience now. And I mean, that first year has to, for a rookie has to be coming at him at 100 miles per hour, and
Mm-hmm.
an off season of knowing more about what you have to do, how you should approach this, what you're going to be looking at as you play your second season. Having that knowledge can only help.
Right.
So the bar of expectation on the tight end is not going to be that high, unless he's a special teams maven or probably a practice squad player.
Well, here's one other thing, and I wanted to mention this real quick too, because a lot of people were kind of like, "What? Why so many safeties? Why did you do these kind of things?" You got to think also about the changing dynamics of special teams. No longer do players get a running start to go downfield to cover kicks on kickoffs and things. You've got to have faster, smaller guys on defense. I mean, on special teams, covering and returning kicks. So you're seeing now a transformation into more linebackers and cornerbacks and safeties out there, and fewer backup offensive linemen. And it's just the rule changes of kind of dictating that.
Yes.
So I think that's also why you're going to see the Saints start loading up more on safeties that can do multiple things because they want a faster special teams. Guys who can get down there quickly and make plays. One thing, real quick, before we go, because I know it's 9 o'clock and I know you're gonna have to go soon, but talk a little bit about the undrafted free agents because we're talking about the Saints and we're talking about a team that has a reputation for undrafted players not only making the team but having an impact on the field. Last year, it was Keith Kirkwood, Dan Arnold, Taylor Stallworth. Those are all guys who were rookie, undrafted free agents, and not only do they make the team, but you see them out there on a regular basis. The Saints already have a reputation, thanks to Mark Ingram and Instagram and Twitter and things, of having a fun locker room where they're all doing the chopper style. They're all celebrating after, so these college kids see this and they go, you know what? That's the kind of team I want to go to because they play well, they take their job seriously, but after the game's over with, this is like a great guys to hang out with. It looks like a fun locker room to be in. We do our work, but we're going to have some fun too. So,
Plus, you know, when is it not fun to win?
exactly, it's never not fun to win. I'll tell you what. Real story, real quick. It was funny when my kids were little. I coached them in all their sports except for soccer. I can't coach soccer. But my kids, when they were little, I coached them in football and basketball and that kind of stuff. And, I tried to make it fun. I cracked jokes and things like that with them, and they laughed a good bit and stuff. But, after the game was over with, I always took the losses harder than the kids did because the kids, I mean, it's January and February, in South Louisiana that it's freezing outside. And after the basketball game's over with, we just lost a close one in overtime. All the all the kids care about is, do we get ices after the game? Who's going to buy the ices? And they had a great time. The loss was over with. It's out of their head. Me, I'm sitting there going, man, I should have substituted this. We should have run a pick play here. I should have done this. I should have done that. No, they don't care. They don't care. So I think that's kind of how some of these people see the Saints. Even when they lose, they like, it's all right. Come Monday or Tuesday at the facility, they're going to be focused. They're going to win because they want to have fun again. So that's the appealing thing about that.
We want to thank everyone for joining us tonight on Under the Dome. And once again, thank Fan First Productions and invite you guys to subscribe to our show on iTunes and on YouTube. And live from Two Dudes Studios, I send it back to River Ridge, to my faithful partner there.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you for tuning in.
All right, man. Real quick, two guys I think that are worth looking at this rookie mini camp. It's not this weekend, but next weekend, because this weekend's Jazz Fest Part 2. Watch for Little Jordan Humphreys out of Texas and the running back out of Nebraska. And don't make me say this person's name, but he's a tough inside runner who's going to push Dwayne Washington. And I think Little Jordan Humphreys is a good shot at making this team as not only as a special teams guy, but as a guy who's going to be a good slot receiver. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, we'll talk some more about that. We'll have mini camp to talk about. We'll see you next time Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.